First of all, thank you for the opportunity for the interview. Simple question we always start with. What's on your wrist today? And can you tell us a little bit about the watch?
Sure, I can. But first of all, thank you very much for being here. I'm super happy to be with you here in Le Locle. And in Le Locle, we have a casual way, I would say, to talk to each other. So please call me Julien for the interview. I would prefer that. What kind of watch am I wearing? I'm wearing a Chronomaster Sport, which is a very important watch within our collection, part of the historical watches that we've had since the launch of the El Primero in 1969. And it's a very contemporary, sporty expression that's been a bestseller for the last year and a half.
We will discuss the present and the future, mostly in the interview, but I would want to go back in time just briefly. So when you were once upon a time working at Vacheron, and then suddenly you receive a phone call from a certain Jean-Claude Biver, and well, shortly after you become CEO at Zenith, and to be a fly on the wall, how did that conversation go? Because it must have been quite a conversation.
Yes, it was. You know, Jean-Claude Biver is a character in our industry. And of course, when I received first a phone call from someone else asking me if I was willing to talk to Jean-Claude Biver about a career move, I obviously said yes. I was traveling in Singapore and I managed my time to talk, to have a 45 minutes conversation with Jean-Claude Biver, which is quite long with him because he goes very fast. But he very quickly went straight to the point, saying that this beautiful brand part of the LVMH portfolio was not doing as well as it should. And if I was in some way interested in taking over this challenge and bring this brand back to the success it has today. So yes, of course, it was a 45-minute conversation where he basically first asked me what I was thinking about Zenith. And I was as straight as he is, telling him that I've always kept an eye on this beautiful brand. I always thought that the heritage, the history were incredible, but maybe the brand image was not at the right level. Maybe the dynamic inside the brand was not there, and we had something to do. And of course, I've been sleeping on it, but I was like, okay, this is a brand that has a real leverage. You know, I knew that if you do the right job, you could really bring that brand to a totally different league. And that was more or less part of the first discussion we had over the phone.
And well, following up on that then, so since 2017, CEO, what are the bigger accomplishments or key achievements that happened under your watch, at least, since 2017?
Coming back to this brand that was a bit struggling and that we had to fix a lot of things in a short time, it was a big challenge. The first few months, I have to tell you, I was not sleeping so well, and I had very, very long days. But I was working on how can we define the vision? Can we define the path to go for in order to put this brand back on track? And that took me a few months before making sure that also everybody was aligned and the people, because without the people with you, you cannot do anything, even with the best vision. So I had to convince the people, whether at LVMH in Paris or here in Le Locle with the team, that we had the right vision for the brand and that now it was time to implement it. So biggest achievement, of course, there have been many. We started from fixing the website that was not responsive when I came over. We're talking 5 years ago. It wasn't responsive. To the watch boxes, to the product development, to the marketing platform that we worked a lot on to have a better expression of what Zenith is all about. And the list would be extremely long. But of course, my most important thing was, how do I convince the people that we're going to be successful? And some people left. Some people joined, but I mean, the core team is still there. And year after year, we've been improving the situation between 17, 18, 19, where we repositioned the brand. We celebrated the 50th anniversary of the El Primero in 2019. And then we could feel that the success was there, that the turning point for the brand was finally happening. That was without considering a COVID-19 situation with no precedent in human history, that we had to adjust during 2020 and finalize the transformation of the brand. And to be honest, at first we said, okay, COVID-19, when you are super strong, is a big hit. When you are in a recovering phase, it's even harder. So the big challenge for me was to rebound positively in 2021 and to reach the record year of the brand in 2021, confirm, and I can already tell you by a record year right now in 2022. So that's really the best for us, the best satisfaction that we can have.
Brief question, just on Zenith is part of LVMH, the larger group. What are some pros and cons of being part of such a group, and as opposed to being an independent, if you will?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot about how a group is managing the brands, what kind of freedom, what kind of independence, and what kind of support you get. And I think being part of the LVMH for a watch brand like Zenith has been a great asset, a great advantage. Why? Because in the tough years, the group has been supporting us, has been helping us to go year after year and to continue our activity. And that was a big, big help. But they also gave us the means to reposition the brand, to redevelop the brand, and to be as successful as we are today. But this support is not linked to an excess of control. Within LVMH, there is a culture of independence. And I think our main shareholder really wants the brands to be entrepreneurial, to keep this dynamic, innovative spirit. And that's how basically we are very free. Of course, we need to validate, we need to show to our management what we're doing, obviously. But if they believe in your vision, they will let you do the day-to-day. They will let you work in a very independent and entrepreneurial way. And I think that's a fantastic recipe for keeping your dynamism within a big structure as such a group.
Are there also cons that you can touch upon? It's easy to talk about the pros.
Cons, sometimes when you have big group projects that are led or introduced by big companies with large teams, and then of course the group and everybody wants this new initiative to be part of all the brands. Sometimes when you are a small brand, you need to raise your voice and say, listen, I want to do this project, but I have limited means. I have a few people. I cannot be compared to a big brand. So in a way, I will do part of it, but I cannot do everything because I need to dedicate my time to business. I need to be on the field. I cannot only do group initiatives. Otherwise, business is not going well. So sometimes you need to remind, but again, the group is listening well and understand that we don't have the same capacity as very large brands that are really strongly established. So they always leave you this balance.
How do you balance respecting, let's say, the past while following or pursuing the need to innovate, really?
I think it's key, and that was basically the heart of my strategy, my vision when I came on board. I said, we are extremely lucky to have such a heritage, such a history with uninterrupted watchmaking activity since 1865. It's incredible. How many brands would love that? We are also extremely lucky, and people worked very hard for that, but to be a real manufacturer. When I say that, is that 100% of our movements, they are Zenith movements. And every watch we sell has a Zenith movement. How many brands can say that? Very few in the world. Very, very few. And for me, it's a big proof of authenticity, of being a true brand. And when you have the heritage, when you have the authenticity, it's fantastic. But if you only keep those two, you might have the risk to be stuck in the past, to be turned to the past, which was, by the way, the problem of Zenith for many years. And when I came on board, I said, okay, let's build on these two strong pillars a dynamic brand that's turned to the future, that's turned to the 21st century, because we live in 21st century. Today I sell many more watches to much younger people than I am. And this is the future. We are not the future at 50 years old or 60 years old. These young people are the future. So if we don't listen to them, if we don't communicate through the right channels, if you don't use the right, ambassadors and communication tools towards this population, we're going to lose them. And one day your brand is becoming a dusty brand again. So that was a very important balance. But if I have to give you one example, it's when we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the El Primero. I thought that 50 years old is a long time and is not that long. So we should be able to meet people that were part of this incredible adventures in the 60s. We gathered 8 people that came here to Le Locle. I went to have lunch with them, dinner, and few meetings with them. And they were all in their 80s, of course, and they all were part of this incredible race to be the first to have this integrated automatic chronograph movement. And these gentlemen, they shared so many things with me, you wouldn't believe it. Things that are not in books, things that some employees don't even know about it, but they shared me this. So for me, it was living legends telling me stories about these beautiful brands. But one thing they told me, which is so important, they told me, Julien, when we made the El Primero, we were super innovative. We were startuppers, even if the word didn't exist at that time. They were super, everybody told them, you're not going to succeed, you're never going to be able to do it. And they kept on going and they did it. So they told me, Julien, it's great you give tribute to what we've done and you make revival editions or re-editions of our watches. But don't forget to also bring innovation, new product, contemporary, modern watchmaking into your development. And for me, when I heard them, I was like, Jesus, these people from their age, sometimes at this age, you tend to be a bit nostalgic of the past, conservative. They were totally the opposite. Honestly, if they agree, I would have hired back these gentlemen in the company because sometimes they were thinking in a younger way than some younger people today. So that's the mentality of Zenith, that I am the guardian and I push everybody to keep this. So balance between heritage, authenticity, and innovation, creativity.
Okay, no, fantastic.
Sorry, it was a long answer.
No, actually, preferred, and I have to talk less, so that's wonderful. I will pass the microphone to Michel here, avid Zenith collector and connoisseur.
Well, maybe a little bit, but I have to be careful what I'm saying here. You have not been shy of announcing your ambition, and at some point you even mentioned you would like to bring Zenith back to a top 15 Swiss watch brand. Mm-hmm. You must have a plan, otherwise you don't make a statement like that. What would be such an impact on, let's say, your R&D, your production, your distribution? How would that impact that whole organization, you think?
It will, for sure, because Zenith is a brand that's been, again, redeveloping very fast over the last couple of years. And we need to adapt. We need to adapt our people. We need to adapt our structures. We need to increase our production because we have a big demand. But the thing is, increasing your production, there are many ways to do it. And we decided to stick to the authenticity I was referring to. It would be easier for me when I launch a Chronomaster Sport like that, okay, to drive a few kilometers away and to buy external movements, because then I only have to work on the habillage and I could produce overnight many more watches. I don't want to do that. I want to work on the long term. I want to make sure that we keep this authenticity and that the movement that are in the Chronomaster Sport, for example, like any other watch at Zenith, has a Zenith movement. Which means, as you know watchmaking very well, that we need to develop internally. We need to have more people, more capacity, preserving the quality, of course, of the company, the quality of the movements, the quality of the watches, and it's taking time. So that's also one of the good points and the pros of being part of a group like LVMH is that it's a group that's very much in favor of long term, of what we call the artisanat or métier d'art, all these things that are important, and not immediately to make a quick profit that will not be for the future. Of course, we need to be a profitable and healthy brand, and that's what we are now, but we need to build the brand for the future. And that's something super important. So yes, we are adapting a lot. And as you can imagine, today we are making between 25,000 movements, of course, increasing every year. It will not be with no limit. Mm-hmm. So if we want to stay authentic, as I mentioned before, it has some limits, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of timeline, if you would just look 5 years ahead, because that's maybe more easier to understand, by 27, where would you like to see Zenith at that point?
Well, I think we already have more than double our business for the last 5 years. And I think in the next 5 years, with the direction we're taking and the momentum we have, we will between double and triple our business from today. So we have big ambitions, and Zenith is probably part of the top 25 brands today. We should be in the top 10, top 15, in 3 years. Our competitors are doing a very good job also, and all respect to them. They are great brands in the industry. So it's not only fighting for ranking, fighting against competitors. It's just what we deserve as a brand and how Zenith should grow. Again, because of this limitation in terms of production, we will have limit in terms of growth, but we are far from that. And I think today, my ambition is really to consolidate what we've been doing over the last few years. And, I'm here today. One day I will not be here, but the company will still be there. And what I tell the whole team is the day we give the keys to the next team, it has to be a strong position for the brand in which it can be developed for the next decades. And that's our contract, in terms of commitment to our shareholders. It's what we do with this brand to make sure that it's going to last forever.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have been mentioning production now in terms of growth, but if you can share a word on distribution. Yep. So Zenith has embraced a kind of omni-channel policy. Absolutely. From online, wholesales, retail. To achieve those numbers of growth, how will that impact your distribution, or how will you adjust to that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one of the fields among many others on which I had to concentrate a lot when I came on board. Make a long story short, when I came on board, we had very little, if no retail, because the retail had not been performing. Why? Because retail was treated in a similar way as wholesale. They are complementary, but they're not the same. So when I came on board, the first thing I had to do is to work on our network of wholesalers, which was close to 850 doors worldwide, and to make a selection. To make a selection means that I went to almost every door to talk about my vision, again, what we wanted to do with the brand, and to get to know the best partners. Some of them, we already had them on board. Some of them, we had to keep in touch and get them on board. But long story short, we went from 850 to 560 today. So we made a selection of who is willing to invest on the brand, who is willing to play the game properly on the brand, and also on our side, concentrate our effort on the best players. That our objective was to make them do more business with Zenith so that the brand can be bigger within their share of business. And that's clear. Otherwise, you are too diluted. In parallel to that, I had to convince, and first my management, that we know how to do retail in a successful way. And that took me a little bit of time because they were a bit cold by the cold shower they had in the past. So I had to convince with one boutique here, one boutique there, that we can do good business, profitable business with our boutiques, and that more than anything, we offer a very special service to our clients. Because today, that's the way we need to think. And one after the other, of course, when they started to see a couple of examples of successful retail activities, they gave us more possibilities. And now we've been developing. And next to that, you mentioned it, to be a fully omni-channel. And in that subject, I'm very clear. I've always been super clear. We must be online. We must do e-commerce. I mean, today, when I hear people saying e-commerce is not for the watch industry, I can only disagree. Because I think why watchmaking wouldn't be when so many luxury or no luxury businesses have been into e-commerce in a very successful way. And this is before the COVID-19 episode that forced us to be faster. So we started e-commerce. And once we started to be successful in e-commerce and in retail, that was what I call the internal channel, combined with the best partners, then we offer something really omni-channel. And for me, it's fantastic. Today, we've been from a few percent to close to 25% now of internal, which is still mostly wholesale. And here, an important point is that I'm coming from being a wholesale guy, and I believe that wholesale is key. So I will never see Zenith as a brand with only internal boutique. I believe our clients, they don't all of them know as much as you and me we do on watchmaking. So many of them, they want to have a neutral advice and they want to talk to retailers to, if they ask for a nice chronograph, I mean, I really want Zenith to be on the watch tray, but I agree that there could be 2 or 3 other brands on the tray. That's fine. That's the end client to decide. So we should never underestimate the wholesale, and for me, it's a priority channel. But the combination of all three is really the strategy for the coming years. So to answer better your question, we are now in 25 countries in e-commerce. We have close to 30 boutiques worldwide, so 30 Zenith boutiques in the world, and a bit more than 500 retailers. And I think it's a good way to continue to grow.
Yeah, thank you for the clear answer. I still have one more detailed question on the retail activity. You just mentioned you have about 30 boutiques or 40, but it looks like they're mainly focusing on Asia. It looks like in Europe and also in the US. Is this because you are being held back by existing agreements, or is there any other idea behind it why you started mainly in Asia with boutiques, let's say, with retail, and less in Europe?
No, there are probably a few reasons. First of all, this is where we already had a few boutiques. I'm thinking about Ginza in Japan or Shanghai. So it was logical to develop and reinforce this aspect of our business. And of course, Asia is a very retail-oriented in terms of culture, so it was important to take positions there and to show that we can do retail in a successful way. Europe and US is coming very clearly. A couple of weeks ago, we opened our first boutique in London, in Regent Street. We have Le Bon Marché in Paris, which has been there also for a while, which is now very successful. We are among the top players in Le Bon Marché. And in Galeries Lafayette, where we have a corner, we are also getting into the very best watch brands. So step by step, we are gaining. I have to say that COVID has been postponing a few projects also because traffic was down. We have a couple of projects in the US. So yes, it's in our roadmap that we have very clear for the next 3 years. And of course, you mentioned Asia, but let's not forget Middle East. Middle East is a place where we used to have an external boutique in Dubai Mall, which we internalized and became now the best boutique in the world, actually racing with Ginza at the moment, but doing incredible results with Zenith. And thanks to these great results, we got the very first boutique in Saudi that opened also a few weeks ago in Kingdom Mall in Riyadh, which is our first brand presence in Saudi Arabia. So we are really developing everywhere, but at different rhythm and also following opportunities.
A few years ago, Zenith launched something which is, in my opinion, a very intriguing project, which was called the DeFi Lab with the oscillating movement, which was followed by the inventor, as we all know. But after the inventor, it became rather silent. Maybe we know what is the reason why was this put in the fridge, or is something going on with it?
It's not put in the fridge, but it's put on a bench, and we basically were so happy and excited about this development. Very new way to regulate the watch, and in a very innovative way. So we've been very happy with the lab, the inventor. The difficulty came when we realized that our ambition in terms of development was not there yet, and that we believed we could replicate these few watches in thousands. And you remember interviews and discussions we had at that time. We really had big ambition. The problem with this is when you go from a small production to a larger scale, you need to have a lot of human hand correction, and it doesn't enable you to go into a bigger volume. Really difficult to go in a bigger volume. So our ambition was this. Our ambition was not to keep only a few. We still today deliver inventors, but it's a very small quantity, and we cannot go to there. So the idea is we work on the project, we continue to study it, to try to find ways to come back at some point where we can guarantee that we can deliver bigger quantities. And that's the main difficulty we have. It was a disappointment for me, for the company, because we believe first we would do it, but it's wise to say, let's not do it if we're not ready. And that's exactly the situation where we are today.
Okay, thank you. We certainly look forward for when the mass production can start. Since you have been the CEO of Zenith, you also have been, let's say, streamlining the whole lineup in a quite efficient way, as the results prove. Recently, you also made a remark about the elite movement, that you weren't sure what would be the future. Well, we both know the elite was, let's say, after the quartz crisis, one of the first new complete movements that were developed.
True.
So it must be a very important movement for Zenith as well. So today, do you know anything more? Do you have more light where this will go, where this will take you?
Yeah, you're totally right. We went from close to 800 references, SKUs, to a bit more than 200 when I came on board. Now we are between 100 and 115. So less, better, less and more and better. And that's been the strategy we continue to go for. On the Elite, I need to make a small correction. I was not referring to the movement that, of course, we keep and we use actually in different collections, and not only in the Elite collection. I was more referring on the collection itself, which means these very classic, thin, elegant watches. Why? Because today, this segment, even in brands that are very well known for these elegant, thin watches, is going more down than up. Today, the best segment is probably the sport steel watch. Of course, complications, of course, different things, but the super classic is a bit sluggish at the moment. I think the industry had been selling many of those watches to China. China, for the last few years, before COVID, has been opening up to the world, has been traveling more and more and becoming more and more global and less of a locked market in a way. So they opened up also their taste for watchmaking, and they evolved a lot, especially the younger generation. So they are more aligned with the demand outside. And I think that's one of the reasons. I don't believe the classic segment will die or disappear. I think today it's a little bit smaller for every brand. And that's simply where we are today, meaning the Elite collection is a tactical collection. We still have an offer of thin, elegant, dressy watch. We have clients, we sell them, but it's not the same as the other collection at the moment. So that's probably what I was referring to.
You refer to the fact that the sports watches are maybe currently the hottest lineup. You also mentioned previously that you're working on a new pilot collection, which is in the end more like an aviation style or field watch, if you like. But how about divers? Because that's also a very popular category, and in the most, I would say, the most recent 2 decades, Zenith has not been super active, and even in elite movement could be perfectly used for this type of application.
You are really you are very true. Thank you for this question. No, it's true. I mean, when I came on board, if you remember in 2017, and you mentioned a few watches of those days, we have been repositioning the brand by bringing Defy, and the first one was the Defy 21. Then, of course, we worked on growing on the Defy collection, which is about chronometry in a very contemporary approach. We never forgot the Chronomaster collection, which is key to us and is kind of the most iconic watch in terms of the El Primero and the history. But we had to work a lot on the design of this product line to come back strongly in 2019 and even more 2020, 2021. So now we have really Defy and Chronomaster very well established, strong, bringing more and more bestsellers. Pilot, that was very much on the vintage side, is a very important collection to us. Why? Because we have a legitimacy with the Blériot story that you know of. We are the only brand allowed to use the name Pilot on the dial, so we really have something strong with this. But we also decided to do it in order. Defy, Chronomaster, now it's the time of Pilot, and you will see soon, in a few months, the comeback of Pilot in a very, very nice way. Again, respecting our DNA, where we come from, and bringing also some more contemporary aspect of this product line. I won't tell you more because my colleagues would be very upset. But you can expect a big Pilot here next year for Zenith. And the last one you asked for was?
Divers.
The divers, thank you. Divers, and you are totally right also. We have a strong history. We have a few very interesting watches in the divers collection. We got some through the Icons collection at Zenith also, a couple of watches that are super interesting. Yes, at some point we should come back with the diver watch because it's part of our history and it's in the plan. The only thing is we do it step by step again, so it might take a bit more time, but this is a very important subject. I've been looking at some vintage watches that are very interesting in terms of diver watches. So yes, for sure, there is the potential for us.
And I remember from an interview you gave somewhere in April that this year's growth was around 50% at that point. Now we're a little bit further down the road. How's the situation today? Did you maintain that level of growth or is it cooling off?
No, I think we are maintaining this level of growth. We have some different momentum. As you know, July, August is characterized by what we call the watchmaking holiday or closing that we are in a way forced to do because many of our suppliers are also closing down end of July, August. So July, August, usually we have a little bit of lower level of production, but now it's starting very fast again. And September to December, traditionally in watchmaking industry, are the strongest. So we expect to continue to grow. Globally, the brand has a great dynamic. Yes, we will be around this percentage at the end of the year. One point of cautiousness is definitely the environment, because we thought that with COVID-19 unprecedented pandemic situation, we touched something that would leave us in peace for a long time. Now we can see conflicts, we can see the energy crisis, we can see a lot of things that create uncertainties. What I'm very happy about, because those aspects I have no control, we have no control on. So what we need as managers is to anticipate those and to make the brand strong enough to cope with those turbulences. A few years ago, this would have been super hard for Zenith. Now we are confident. We are confident because the brand is becoming strong. So we will face these turbulences. Maybe it's not a 50% or 40%, it's a 30%, it's a 20%, whatever. But we will continue to grow because the brand is doing it strongly as a single entity. And that's super important. The second element is that for the first time, I can tell you that the growth we're experiencing is worldwide. I mentioned Middle East before, USA, Asia, Europe, everywhere we are growing. So when China was, for example, under lockdown a bit longer than us during the spring, I mean, allocations that were supposed to go to China, of course, we helped other market. If tomorrow there is something happening in XYZ country, we can play with allocations in order to work with countries that can do it properly and not overload countries that are in difficulties. And that's a great luxury we never had. And that's kind of a guarantee that we can go through a big storm from an economic point of view without too many damages. Yeah.
Can we share a word on vintage? Vintage being super important. You are a very rich brand in that sense. I know you have your Icons program, but I was wondering, is there any other project like cooperation with reference books, or okay, there's also the watch clinic, of course, but really things that you do to celebrate and to share the history of Zenith? Is there anything new in the pipeline there? I'm talking also about marketing now, not just product.
Of course. You're talking about Zenith Icons. Zenith Icons, I'm very impatient. I would like to go much faster. You know, we have this beautiful wooden box, and last week I was in Japan and I was in our Tokyo boutique, and we have this beautiful box, but it's empty. It's empty because they sold out close to 12 watches that we delivered to them, vintage watches, part of the program, and they just asked for us to send other ones, but we are very short on sourcing. So it's a great project, but it's hard to keep it always alive. What we need to do is to communicate more on that. That's part of the plan, really, to make it much more present within our collection. A book, yes, but I also want to go beyond the book and probably work more online with the vintage. You know, there is an access for Zenith Icons purchase online, but I want to communicate more, to make always a link between the past and today, because that's why we're doing that also. It's not for the business to sell vintage watches. It's more to have a tool for the salespeople, but for the clients to understand very well where we come from, where a watch like this one, Chronomaster Sport, is coming from. It's thanks to watches that were launched in the 60s and the 70s. And this is a message that's very important for me. So always, yes, going to the past, yes, going to vintage, but it has to have a meaning with today's world. You know, otherwise we are on the museum side, which is good. We have a project here in Zenith, of course. We have been working on the whole visit, which is very new and dynamic. And I invite people listening to us and watching us today to come to Le Locle and to visit the manufacturer, because it's a new tour that's quite amazing. Part of them is the watch clinic that you mentioned, which is a great way to get inside the El Primero and to feel it literally from inside. But of course, here we have 18 buildings, and next to me, you see the very first building where Georges Favre-Jacot started everything. Today, it's difficult to walk inside because it's a bit, it's not in a good condition. But of course, tomorrow, after tomorrow, we should do something with this. We should create a museum. We should create a place where you feel the history, you feel the spirit of Georges Favre-Jacot, and you can see and expose all the beautiful watches that we have without mentioning the kilometers of archives that are still not exhibited in a proper way. So that's going to be a big thing. And for me, every time we do something strong here at the manufacturer, to be client-centric and not manufacturer-centric, you have to think about how you export the concept. That's what we've been doing with exhibitions all over the world. That's what we've been doing with the Chronomaster, the chronograph, Master of Chronograph exhibition that is now traveling around the world. And that's what I would like to do with this concept. So yes, there will be quite a few things on our past and our vintage watches.
Okay, good news as well. I think there's one big general wrap-up question still left to ask you, if we may.
Please.
What do you consider today the key challenges, and connected to that also the key opportunities for the watch industry, or the Swiss watch industry at least as a whole?
Mm-hmm. I think the key challenge has been there for a little while, is how do we convince new generations, if we have to, because some we don't, but some we might have to convince them that wearing a mechanical watch is something incredible, is a great experience. You know, we have to make sure that not too many young people do not wear a watch at all, or wear what I would call a cell phone on their wrist. You know, because those people might not be our clients of tomorrow, and I think they might miss. Again, it's not about time telling, it's about emotion. It's about, I mean, you like watches, you know exactly what I mean, and probably people watching us, they understand exactly, but having a nice watch means so much to someone that this is something we need to communicate on, and we need to, as an industry, sometimes we should be more together as an industry. It's not always the case. Competing is good, but sometimes you have to be, as an industry, to transmit this emotion, to communicate on this in a worldwide basis. And I think that's probably one of the challenges that we need to make sure we work on, and we preserve this magic on watchmaking. But again, if you stay too conservative in your approach, e-commerce, communication, and everything, and the channels you use to talk to young people, you have the risk to become a museum industry. You have the risk to become a museum brand, meaning part of the past. So we have to listen to young people, and we have to communicate them to be appealing to them as well. And I think that's a very important thing to do. I'm Swiss myself, so I might be allowed to say that Swiss people sometimes are considered a bit conservative, a bit slow, and we have to jump into the boat of the 21st century. I think that's a key challenge as an industry. Opportunity is linked to that in a way, is that the population is developing in the whole world. More and more people can afford buying luxury goods and are attracted by luxury goods. So if you communicate it well and explain that luxury is about long term, it's not about quick things, you know, and luxury should be beautiful objects that stay forever. There is no better object than a watch, if you think about it. I often say that a nice, good quality mechanical watch in 400 years should be able to function if you have a watchmaker regulating, putting some oil. How many things in my room here, you can say the same. Your camera is probably one of the top one, but in a few years, maybe months, it's obsolete, right?
Correct.
And most of the things around us are like that. So I think it's a lot about this dimension of time and long term that is a great opportunity for us. But and we are wrong if we believe that young people don't consider that as an important point.
Okay. Fantastic. Yes. Thank you very much for the time spent with us and the straightforward and honest answers. Jan, do you want to conclude with anything? Or?
So from now on, I can call you Julien. So that's nice.
Please,
that's the best takeaway of the day.
Otherwise, I feel too old.
No, thank you so much. Thank you very much, and actually for the very open answers.
Thank you for your visit also.
Yes.
You came all the way to Le Locle, and we have a good weather today, so you are lucky.